Okay, sorry, I was looking at something. Thank you so much, or welcome everybody. This is the Policy and Curriculum Committee meeting on Tuesday, January 25th at 5:37 p.m.
Right.
And I'm your chair, Nylat. I don't think I've ever said that, but hello.
And I'm Julie Opperman, a member.
Aaron Townsend.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sarah.
No. Sarah Lentz, chair of the board.
Okay. Aaron Townsend, Deputy Superintendent, staff for the Policy and Curriculum Committee. All right, maybe we can go through and start to do some of the review and discussion, and then hopefully Mickey can join in and we can check to see if she had questions about things, any of the things we'd covered before she joins, and then take action if appropriate on those pieces. Does that sound like a plan?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, I'm going to share my, let's see, one. Okay, so we're going to jump in at the top of the agenda with policy BEC-E, the employment of relatives. I think, again, I was saying, as we'll see this, right, many of these had not been reviewed in some time, or there had been some, Drummond model policy updates since it had last been reviewed, and this will be the one, I think, D on our agenda. 2D is going to be the most conversation. We don't actually have a policy on the books, but it is a required one. So that's where we'll spend probably most of our time. Okay, so the employment of relatives, I have that one called up. So, and Melissa Huey actually did the review for us on this one because our regular partner, Rachel Sears at Drummond, was busy with a case. So this is all Melissa's kind of feedback and guidance. But the only kind of proposed change here was the elimination of this paragraph. There was some lack of clarity within it, and it kind of is the substance of it is addressed elsewhere, both in this policy and elsewhere in our policy book. So all she was recommending for cleanup here was the elimination of this paragraph. So, pause on this one and see if there's any questions about this policy.
It seems, I read it over, it seems straightforward. My question is, do we have anybody that is grandfathered right now? I mean, because it says to the effect of prior date, isn't it? 19th or something?
But
that it was, that the exceptions, it says exceptions to policy, I think somewhere it says with people who were already employed at that date, in the 2015. I think that's the one that does it.
I don't think it's this one. Let me just double check.
Maybe it's a different one. It's just okay. Mea culpa.
I think you may be referring to the conflict of interest policy.
Okay.
Because I don't see the date thing there. But we're going to get to that one.
Okay. I didn't know if we had.
I'm not aware of any. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just. Alrighty.
Yeah. Any other questions, conversation, or good on that one, Nylat and Sarah?
I just had one piece of feedback. Just because I think we are so community oriented as a district that we often have other organizations coming into our school buildings to work. And so I just wonder if there is I guess it's organizational jurisdiction is the language there that I'm just wondering if we could out loud say something like, I don't know, either directly employed by the district or not from another organization working within the building, like some clarity that just says people from other organizations that are working in the building do not fall under this policy.
Yeah, I wonder if because we'll look at conflict of interest. which I think, maybe let's look at conflict of interest as it relates, because I think this one is intended to, speak specifically to employing people within the organization, within Portland Public Schools, and the hiring and kind of supervision, as it states there. So we could potentially, kind of have some language there, but I'm wondering if in your question, in the conflict of interest, that'll also come up.
But I guess I'm thinking that like someone could be on the board and their partner works in the school, but not for the district. And that to me isn't a conflict of interest, nor is it will it fall under this policy? But I think that there's a perception sometimes in the community that if someone works within a building, they are under the jurisdiction of the district. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say? I can try to say it again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I understand what you're saying. In other words, you're saying that if someone we do contract out to other organizations and all, and sorry.
Yeah, like any of the social workers that are kind of like in the buildings, or medical staff, or nonprofit organizations that come in to run programs. Those are they're not employed by the district. They may have a contract with the district, which I guess falls under the conflict of interest. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there could be something about like partnership or contracts, and that like there being a piece about like family members there, because if like, if somebody's on the board and we were looking to contract for a building, and that like contractor or like the person that was holding that contract was like a relative of the person.
Well, that's why I think let's go to the conflict of interest policy, because this one really is specifically to govern just employment within PPS. The conflict of interest, I think, may, and we can come back and forth. We're not going to take any action at the moment anyway. So I'd say let's with that lens kind of look at the conflict of interest policy and see if there's language that resolves that issue, or if there's additions that would help resolve it, or if it helps clarify what we want to resolve here, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just go ahead.
The only other edit I would make is maybe expanding the partners. So like husband, wife, and making it inclusive to LGBTQ communities.
Here on that bullet right there.
On top.
Yeah. No, good call. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So sorry. And I interpreted this policy as in relating to board members. So I can retract all of my comments, because this policy is not in relation to board members. This is just employment of relatives overall. So scratch everything I just said.
Everything you just said.
We're just going to carry it over to the next.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate the grace, everyone.
Okay, but thank you, Nyla. That's a good catch. We'll expand that to ensure all of that language is both, kind of gender neutral, as well as, represents all the various ways people might identify as members of an immediate family. Okay, so let's go to BCB. So this is the conflict of interest policy. There was minimal suggested change. Oh yeah, just the elimination. The elimination of this last statement, just because we already have a volunteer policy, which is in section K of the policy book. So just felt like it was superfluous to have this here. So that was what was here. But any other questions people had about this, or we can kind of dive in? So contracts, I mean, this seems like this will, so go back with Sarah's comments. Direct. People okay if I scroll down to the employment section? I don't know if people are looking on their own devices or not. 1 year after civil office.
We had a discussion on this, the change seems reasonable, but we had a discussion on this policy previously because of Member Grant having an employment outside and all, and it does say here to consider themselves, step back from any thing that would affect their the relationship with the teachers. And so, or anything related to personnel or funding of schools or policy related to what teachers or anybody does. So I've had questions, but I just think, how can I explain this? I've tried, explain this to people in terms of this particular policy, the fact that it's, I guess, full disclosure of interest, he does that. Is that contract 2 okay? I mean, is that where I say in a discussion, if I go to the policy, this is the line in contract, under contracts, section 2. Is that where we are keeping everything above board?
Yeah, that's why we disclose every time before a vote that conflict, and then he doesn't vote.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that my comments from before fall under the employment section, bullet 2. So what is the school unit in this policy?
I mean, an employee in the school unit means, employed as a, whatever we would say, employee of, not as a contractor, not as an organization that is contracted with Portland Public Schools, but as an actual employee as defined in, the relevant, kind of labor law, right? So they're make hourly or salaried or whatever it's maybe.
Would it be helpful to say may not be a Portland Public School employee in the school unit, in the district? I mean, it's the whole district, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So maybe it may not be public. I mean, it might, like I said, be a contractor, but it might not be a public PPS employee in the school district. How's that sound?
Well,
Sarah, I think your scenario does apply here. It also would apply to the contract, right? If a partner of somebody, right, if we were bringing forward for ratification, a contract with, say, Learning Works, right, for running after school program, and somebody's partner worked for Learning Works, even as I read this as like a, in any function, right, not even in a leadership.
employed by him.
Right, they would need to recuse themselves based, similarly to, based on Ben's, in the same way Ben does. It would be that same section relevant.
I agree. And I guess I think like in legal talk, school unit has its like defined definition. We use it in other policies. So I think maybe I need to, I think I'm okay with the language as is, as long as we're really clear about what it means internally.
Did we change school unit?
I was going to double check that. I think we have in some places been updated.
Okay.
That's we'll check on whether it's like, yeah, the district, just a little more. So I can confirm whether.
Yeah, somewhere we changed something about that when they were fixing things to make it new.
Well, yeah, I mean, we go back and forth. The last set of policies we cleaned up, they reinserted school committee in the lieu of the board, right, in places. But I don't know. We've been deliberate about kind of updating the language to talk about the Board of Public Education versus school committee. I don't know that we've been as consistent with school unit and district because there may be particular language that we're drawing upon from the ed code because that's how it's referred to often in the state laws. So,
And so are you saying that like with what happened with Ben, that if it's just specific to what is the conflict of interest? So if you work at Learning Works, it's specific to like a decision based on Learning Works?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, with Ben's situation was interpreted very broadly. I think there is because the goal, as it says at the top, is to prevent the occurrence of real or apparent conflicts of interest. And so, I think a lot of the kind of safeguards we put around, Ben's participation was really, to kind of prevent the appearance of apparent conflicts of interest, even, because he's fairly well removed from individual employee contracts, right? That's what he's, not the awarding of the contract. I read this often as broader, more organizational, not individual employment contracts, but I think it serves the same purpose. So, okay. All right, that's good. Yeah, I understand just, Sarah, if like to the point of like, do we all understand the same thing? It's essentially like nobody's, if somebody has a partner and they're on the board, the partner can't work for the district. So going back, like a situation, we had a former board member, Member Atkinson, his wife now does work as a literacy coach in our system, but they did not that wouldn't have been possible. She did not work for us at that time. She's joined the district since he stepped down from the board.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
You good? I see you thinking. So.
Yeah, I'm still just like, can we just check on the term school unit just to make sure? Like, I'm just thinking about like Greater Portland Health or Spurwink or any of those like organizations that come and work in our school. They are excluded from that point 2. And I just want to make sure that that is clear.
Point 2 here in the employment.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. What is that?
Even our lawyers too.
But hopefully they're not running for school board. Maybe. I shouldn't exclude them. Maybe Drummond Woodson wants to come and run for school board. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah.
For entertaining that.
Yeah. Okay. So next on our agenda is the executive sessions. I don't know that Melissa had any. She kind of thought, particularly BEC-E, we should just like get rid of. But I would say I think it's helpful in our context of turnover of board members and for public visibility to understand what executive session is and so forth. So I wouldn't advocate that we get rid of it, but she did not have any proposed changes for us on BEC or BEC-E. Her description was these are statements of law. And these are accurate, consistent statements of law.
I would agree to keep the E policy, BCC-E or BEC-E. Mm-hmm. I found it helpful.
Yeah, I agree. I referenced it recently as well, just in some moment. So
I think I had a question I got to check that I made note of somewhere, and just going to see what it was. Yeah, it was BEC-E, Section C. And I guess I needed to understand if it means the discussion of possible sale of district property is acceptable as executive session. I know that sounds weird, but I'm just trying to understand the particular
I mean,
Can you say what your question is again? Sorry.
Go on under Section 3, letter C.
yeah.
Okay. And it says discussion or consideration of the condition of acquisition or use of real or personal property permanently attached to reach property, disposition of public property or economic development, but only if prematurely disclosed of the information would be prejudice the competitive or bargaining position of this public body. That's the one. So in other words, we don't want to get, and in this context, anyone listening to this should know that this is not a discussion going on. But if a discussion were to go on, needed to be discussed about how to handle a piece of the school property, whether it be a computer or whether it be real estate or anything, that the initial discussion could be an executive session. Is that what that says?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, I believe so, broadly interpreted. I mean, I think if it faced scrutiny, it would be if the discussion was held in public, would it prejudice the competitive or bargaining position of the body? Would Portland Public Schools lose some opportunity for realizing some benefit, right, either from the sale and disposition of the property or some form of other economic development by having had the conversation in public?
Yes. Okay. It's just an interesting thought.
It's very niche. I
mean, I could see it being
such
relevant
a small category
in like the plans around central office, right? 353 Cumberland, right? It might be appropriate to review the internal status of the facility, like a building assessment, right? You know, that you would want to review confidentially first to determine, you know, to even come to like making a determination about whether you're going to sell it or not sell it or whatever the case may be.
Right. And since it's an executive session, members of the executive session could say nothing to any outside party. So that would make it better.
Yeah.
Have a discussion and a restraining discussion.
Right.
You know, that things are not shared outside of what they need to be shared. So, and then so of course, then it would be out in the open ultimately, but that initial piece might be discretionary.
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure I understand all these.
Yeah. No, but yeah, even though there weren't a lot of, you know, substantive changes, I thought, you know, always useful to go deep on a few of these. So, okay. If any other question, Nyla, any questions on the executive session stuff?
No, I'm okay.
All right, let's turn to our big one for the evening, the remote participation in school board meetings. So just by way of introduction to this, I couldn't track down, and I tried to ask, I asked Melissa, and we remembered discussion about this in like 2020, but couldn't remember why a policy never got adopted. So it is now a required policy. So there's definitely some urgency to, you know, given our current practice, right? To get this policy on the books. What she's highlighted in yellow is what, I'm proposing I would revise based on our conversation. The initial model draft as it reads here, which is what, she shared, is, only allows for remote participation in very specific situations, right? In these limited circumstances, right? Which is prescribed here, which is like an emergency, an emergency or other state declared emergency. So it's a pretty narrow set of reasons of why we could meet virtually, or members could meet virtually. So obviously that's not our current practice, hasn't been, I think, broadly the board, and as it should, I would, personal opinion, promote participation in as many ways as possible, right, for both members, right, as well as for the public, which has been consistent. We haven't, I think we're in good position because any participation we've afforded members, right, we've also afforded the public. Obviously, it would be problematic if members could log in, but, there wasn't remote public comment or whatever. So I think the conversation here is, do we want to land with language that kind of reflects our current practice? And I think that would lead us to defining when it is appropriate for folks to be able to participate remotely, right? And maybe that's just solved simply with I don't know, in various work contexts, right? With permission from your supervisor. So it's maybe with permission from the board chair might be language, right? Based on personal situation or something. So I don't think we need to enumerate every situation that might be appropriate, right? That would probably be too much for this. So, or do we want to, are there concerns about our current practice in terms of remote participation that we would want to use this as an opportunity to kind of tighten up around in some fashion and make the opportunity to participate remotely more narrow, both for members as well as the public who would follow? So I think that's the conversation to have. I would propose we discuss, generally kind of the gist of it, and I'll, kind of craft a red line version to be reviewed at a first read and workshop would be my thought, just to keep this moving, but to have had the chance for the board to kind of weigh in on the substance here.
So this is board meetings.
Yep.
Not committee meetings.
Well, no, it also, because it says board meetings used in this include subcommittee meetings. So for example,
that would be a distinction that might be useful, because although I would love to see all of you every time we possibly could, there are times, for a lot of people that, making it to 3 meetings in a week is impossible. So, right. And that would, because of other commitments and all. So that would be one. I think that change might be worth it for real.
Wait, I'm sorry. What are you proposing?
To say that does board, and this does not include, or somehow say subcommittee meetings can be in person or routinely in person or routinely online, as deemed by the chair or whatever, something along that line. Because not to say that it is that all subcommittee meetings must be in person. So some distinction there. Is that okay, Islet, Sarah?
So really quickly, Mickey is here, and if we could move her over, that would be great.
Good.
Yeah.
The other.
I obviously won't be here next year, so I don't know how much I should say about this, but I think that if we're trying to create resources or make this board accessible to all types of people, I think we need to make sure that it is loose. I guess not as loose. Maybe not, that's not the word, but I think the idea of making it obviously making it mandatory to show up in person, but creating space for people to be able to show up on Zoom, even for the business meetings, I think that creates a different form of accessibility. I mean, I don't have children, but I'm assuming if people like had children and literally couldn't get a babysitter, like that would be it would be accessible for them to do those meetings for like a while. But yeah, I mean, I've appreciated the way we've been working. I think that type of accessibility of letting somebody just like determine whether they can make it or not in person, I think that has been accessible for me. I don't know about everybody, but I definitely understand like needing to ensure people are there.
Welcome, Mickey. We'll catch you up on a couple of the things we talked about. We've had some discussion about a few of the policies. We'll catch you up here at the end before we move to take any action. We haven't taken any action. Right now, we're having discussion about, this is kind of our most substantive discussion, I think, is how we want to shape the this remote participation in school board meetings. And I think the current draft is written that it's only allowable in a very specific, narrow circumstances, and so which is not consistent with our current practice. So the question is just, what do we want the language to reflect is generally what we're discussing.
I personally really appreciate seeing people's faces, physical beings in a meeting, because I use all my senses to gather information, body language, and I talk with my hands, so that's something. But so that yes, if a person is ill and still could be on, even though they're ill, but not, or there's a one situation, but I think when we only have 4 people in the room, it doesn't feel like a board meeting. It feels, even though the other people are in the cloud, it doesn't feel coherent, I guess is the term I might say. And that's, my impression of how I think, boards operate in general. I appreciate people having difficulty in trying to make things accessible. And being on the school board is a big deal. I mean, people always say that about the city council, but I think the school board is equally as critical to the city as city council, and so they tend to be there and accept that as a general practice. That's my 2 cents.
Can I just add my opinion too on this? Yeah, and I think I will echo what Julia just mentioned about, because I really feel like, in person has been a lot of values one-on-one, so we can see each other, we have a better discussion. And I feel like, okay, that's just a circumstances. I mean, if somebody is ill or, out of state, that make more sense. Then we can be remote. But I'm really going to go to most in favor to be in person. It's just twice a month. Then we meet, and most of the committees is on Zoom. I don't mind with that, but I think, and it's just giving a lot of respect to the whole body that we represent, and we just committed on be there. So we've been recording, people see us on Streamline. So it's a lot of going on, and sometimes it's not looking okay to have an empty room with 4 or 5 board members and leading the meeting. So I'm really in favor to push in person more often, but when people has a different circumstances, it's fine to have a hybrid. Yes.
Sarah, any input, reflections from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I feel a lot of different things about this. Like, I do want to increase access as much as possible. Like, I wouldn't be able to do all the things that I do if I couldn't do like all of the committee meetings remotely. So, and I think that there are times when it is just like people need to be able to be remote in the full board meetings. Like, I wonder if there's like and it does feel like engagement drops when we're mostly remote in some ways. And so I do think that there's like some norming around like expectations of participation that the board can do to address that. But like, I wonder if it's like if we put in like, there's a strong preference for in-person participation. If that is not possible, then remote participation is welcome over no participation. And I do think the piece of like, just like, I don't think it's necessarily permission the right word, but just like checking in with the board chair, and the committee chair is the person that makes the call about if the meetings are online or in person, and if people can change the method. And I also think like for students, like I think the meetings, our student reps, that they're much more accessible for our students if they can call from home and participate. Like, it is a big lift, I think, for a lot of our students to come in and sit for, 4 or 5 hours and then get transportation home. So I don't want to lose it by any means. And I think it should be broader than just like being sick to be able to use remote participation. So I don't know how we like include a preference, but still make it so people can use or remote call in.
Okay. I mean, this sounds, I mean, this is where we'll work on the actual language that then, when this comes back for a first read and workshop, this will be one that may require, a friendly amendment before second read, just to see the language ahead of time. But I'm hearing correct me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing some consistency from people's reflections, which is certainly value the in-person, want to prioritize that for regular board business meetings as much as possible. However, we also value engagement over non-engagement, and so want to have some language that defines when that's not possible, when they're ill, when you're traveling, something, right? That is a reasonable set of kind of reasons, right? That isn't, that says in what situations it'd be appropriate to participate virtually, and include an expectation that they're communicating with the chair, either of the full board or of the committee, not necessarily for decision making, but communicating how they will be participating if they're not going to participate and not be there in person, right? So it's not like putting the chair to decide like, yes, I'm granting you sick day, not sick day, kind of deal. But just it's an informing, is what I heard. And then I think clarifying, back to the beginning comment, Julianne, just clarifying the subcommittee, given our current practices, all the committees do meet fully virtual, right? So how do we account for that language without removing the potential of having an in-person committee meeting if that was what was appropriate? So those are the themes I'm hearing. Does that, and what people would want to see in the language of this policy? Okay.
Yeah. Hold on. Nyla just came off mute. Can we see her
Sure,
response to
No,
that?
I was just gonna say, yeah, I think that sums up, or Sarah basically said what I want, or what I was trying to say, just the idea of like creating space for people who just can't or don't have the capacity to. And like, I think the language of like, at least just letting people know how you'll show up, or if you're not going to show up at all, I think that's good, because it's still creating that accessibility, but it's giving space for communication. And I think like, yeah, like the idea of like, yeah, we prefer in person, but obviously would like accommodate needs based on what comes up.
That's great language. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Accommodate needs. I like the word need, not convenience, but need, which is pretty much what I think people do anyway. But
Yeah, that's where I feel like yeah, I don't feel like we've had major issues with this, right? And it's promoted more full engagement generally, or participation, obvious, in the way we've been. So codifying that while also asserting kind of this value of in-person feels like the right balance. So what I would propose on this one is that, our action tonight would be to bring to a first read of the full board a redlined version with draft language, that reflects, the content that we just discussed, just so that we can get this one on the books sooner rather than later, since it's first read as opposed to pushing it further back on the committee, the policy committee's agenda.
I do want to say one thing. I think you're absolutely right. That's what you should do. We should do. But I know when I was going to run and I talked to Emily about it, Member Figdor about it, and she said, showing up to the meetings, go to the board meetings so you know what it's about. And I always remember her saying that to me, and it was effective. So,
yeah. Yep, we were off for a while. We're like, who's that? What's she doing here?
Yeah, well, it's Emily's fault.
No, it is really helpful.
Someone in the audience, but it really was helpful because I then understood by watching people and hearing people how things worked. It was good.
Sarah?
Sorry, just one other piece of language just to reflect kind of like the recent board meeting where we went 100% remote. And I made that decision based on kind of like the exhibit that was set up at Casco Bay and most people needing to call in remotely. Just like, I think it's like the will of the board chair we've talked about, but just I wanted to give that example into the record just so that we make sure that that is
whether there's an issue.
Urgent issue. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks,
yeah.
Erin.
And, I could see some, so I think we'll land it in that language. I don't know if that's the exact right language, but, or other, other issue that requires remote meeting of the board. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, do we want to take that action? I think the proposal again would be to send to the full board for consideration, a redlined version that reflects our conversation for review and a first read at the first meeting in August.
I move that.
Yep. Sorry.
That we move this as to be.
Oh, were you asking to move it?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So I was moving it.
Okay, can I get a motion to move this to the full board, please?
I moved.
A second.
Thank you. All in favor of moving this to the full board? Perfect.
Great. Okay. I'll work.
Nyla, what was your vote there?
Sorry. Oh, I raised my hand. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. Unanimous vote. I just want to make sure we're keeping track of the voting record on that.
Yeah. No, I definitely get it. Thank you.
For the language in the policy here. Yes.
We are experts.
Yeah. Needs to either be by voice or anyway. Okay. Let's do the last two and then we'll circle back to the ones we discussed briefly. Just I think that's probably most efficient. So super thin policy here. Again, it hadn't been reviewed in some time. So again, a very nominal change here to eliminate that. I don't, it's not a current role we designate and so forth. So feels like that is just a brief clarification. So any additional comments, feedback on that? Yeah, right. All right, Nyla, if you want to do the business to bring this forward with this minor change.
Is this one for BEDD?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry, just can I get a motion to pass on BEDD or pass on policy BEDD to the full board? Thank you, Julianne. Can I get a second?
A second.
All in favor? I'm also, sorry, I forgot I turned on my camera. Okay, I think we're good, Aaron.
Right. All right. And then the last one here, the use of email. What was, let me go back and check my notes. I'm going to stop sharing for just a sec from what, did Melissa not really have any revisions to this? So I'll double check if you want to review. Nope. Okay. Okay. Yeah, BHE, no revision recommended. So, so unless there's something you want to propose, I felt like I'd keep it on the agenda. I don't think this needs to go to the full board, right? You know, for review, unless there is something anybody would want to propose. This one was more recently updated in October 2019. So any questions about the email or electronic communication policy? Okay. Okay. And then that one we do not need to move forward or take any action upon. I think I will, I'll double check with Melissa. I think I would note that it was reviewed. That can be, you know, adopted, reviewed, just so that that's in the record that we'd looked at it as of this date. Okay, well, we'll go back to the first few policies. So Mickey, we had conversation but took no action about a few of the initial policies on the agenda. So I'll kind of go back to them one by one to see if you have any, I'll try and summarize from the benefit of the group what we discussed, see if you have any additional questions or comments about the policy, and then we can kind of take action. All right. So I'm just going to share again. So we started with BCC in employment of relatives. And I think generally we are in agreement about the removal of this paragraph, and the other proposed revision that is not here that we would include as we brought it forward in first read was some revisions to the language here in the members of immediate family to ensure we're, you know, being LGBTQ plus, friendly, and that the language there reflects, the various kinds of, so in the top one, it could be husband, wife, domestic partner, things like that, that we might reflect there that also meets the definition of members of the immediate family. So, so that was the conversation we had around this one, the employment of relatives within the school district. Did you have any questions? Hang on, man, I see your hand. Hang on one sec. Let me see if Mickey, then we'll come back to you. If nothing urgent, Mickey, I'll take Julianne's question.
No, it's not nothing. I just need to have a little clarification about that policy about employment of relatives. I mean, oh, okay. So can you just scroll down a little bit on the families? Okay. Okay. All right. That makes sense.
Okay. Julianne?
The point I was going to make is about employees' household. And I guess the reason I brought that up is if somebody doesn't have an apartment and you have a room is that considered the household or not? And I guess that would be not that we have to change it, but that is just something that popped in my head thinking of housing is getting so tight. Yeah, so as far as that goes, I mean, I don't know that we need to change it.
Okay. I'll ask,
That's a great question, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. I'll ask that question as I think about, the other, revision Nylat suggested. So, I'll seek what kind of clarification we can get. And I'm meeting with Sarah to hand off this policy work and so forth. So, Executive Director Sarah Warren. So I'll flag that.
When we say about the immediate families, so that mean when we go over grandfather, grandmother, so that mean those extend. So if we go around because when I look at, well, like, it's just the way people are defining different culture is totally different when we mention about it. Because my cousin, if it's really my auntie, sister, my mom's sister is really a immediate relative. So it just depends the way people can identify those immediate families. It's just living to the area here, because including in-laws, it's kind of a little far from us than my cousin, my direct cousin. So it just depends the way we have the definition of immediate family.
Maybe it might be useful to look at we put on the contracts and family leave section on contracts. There's a definition there, and maybe we follow pretty much that definition. It's a thought. But I know what you're talking about.
Guardian? Wouldn't that fall under guardianship?
Yeah, there you go.
You could put that for people who are like, who have guardians or are like under, you know, like, or McKinsey Bento, which they're under like the teen shelter, right?
You know, yeah.
Or human services or whatever.
Yes, they could be. I mean, human services would be a foster youth more likely, but. Okay. So we'll try and tidy up the language on just who it's referring to kind of update, you know, kind of in this more modern sense, and be relevant kind of to all the different ways, to make your point how, you know, we kind of speak about what it means to be a member of an immediate family. So, okay. So I think with that, we would then, you know, I think the proposal now would be, you know, if we'll, you know, provide revisions to those, you know, what's defined as members of the immediate family, and then remove that initial paragraph. So, if you want to. Are you
going to bring it back here, or are you going to go make those revisions and then send it to the board?
I would propose the latter, you know, that we go ahead and send it to the board, given that those, you know, there'll be an opportunity for you all and the full board to review those revisions, you know, at that first read. Okay.
Can I get a motion to send policy BEC-E with its new or potential provisions to the full board? Thank you, Julianne. Can I get a second?
I'll do second.
Mickey, all in. I was like waiting. I was like, did they not hear me?
Just let me go first. All in favor? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we had board member conflict of interest. I think. You know, we had some discussion that we just worked through kind of in terms of just understanding, you know, across both of the employment policy and the conflict of interest policy. I think substantively, we were agreed that we would, you know, propose the removal of, you know, this item number 4. And then here, we're going to consult on whether we want to use the term school unit here or use something more familiar to kind of the public to refer to kind of the school district or within Portland Public Schools, just to make that point a little more clear, because we had some discussion around that. So those were the 2 proposed areas of kind of revision or feedback. Mickey, did you have any questions about this conflict of interest one? No? Okay. Okay, well, Nylan, if you want to facilitate.
Okay. Can I get a motion to move policy BEC-E to the full board for first read?
I'll move.
Thank you, Mickey. Can I get a second? Thank you, Julianne. All in favor? Perfect. It is moved.
Right. And then BEC, I think we didn't have any proposed changes, but we decided that we wanted to keep these as is. Melissa thought these were accurate statements of law. Her feedback was this one in particular, the BEC-E, is not necessary. But I think our general sense was that it is helpful to have it laid out both for members of the board and members of the public versus, buried in state statute somewhere. So I think we were proposing not taking any action, but just leaving the policies as is and maintaining both the formal policy and the BEC-E, the explanation of the law.
Did you say you recently edited this one too?
Let me go back.
Or is that just?
2015, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm fine. I think that's fine.
Do we want to say that it's reviewed and accepted in 2024? I mean, it's 9 years ago.
Yeah. I'll do the same. That's a good point, Julianne. I'll update it in the same way I did the email one. So where we don't need to take any action, but can acknowledge that it was reviewed on this date.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So then moving forward, just to summarize, I'll go back to the agenda. We'll have, some revisions to BCC and then BCB, the conflict of interest. And I think those will be good to, again, just kind of have the full board aware of. Then BED is the more substantive one that'll come forward for first read. And then there was just the minor change in the rules of order. So those are things that we've approved to go forward for first read to the board on August 6th.
Awesome. That was faster than I thought. Thank you, Mickey, for coming on time. It's good that we were able to vote. So we don't have a meeting next month, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess we can adjourn.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Just to thank this committee and Aaron's leadership on this committee to get through all of these policies. Aaron will be transitioning out of this role by the time we start in August again. So just want to thank you, Aaron. Thank you.
Wow. So you will not be with us in August?
No, I will be turning over the reins to Sarah Warren to be the staff person for the Policy and Curriculum Committee.
Okay.
But still here to help with boundaries, high school redesign, big strategic projects.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely important. Well, thank you so much, Aaron, for everything. This has been great. You've definitely been really helpful.
Yeah, good. No, I've appreciated everybody's preparation and work through on these to get through this. It was definitely a team effort this year to get this level of updating done. So thank you all.
Yeah, and good luck when you're not here with us. Whatever you're doing with your time. So,
to the island.
Okay.
To the island.
Enjoy the island. Get out there lots this summer.
Yeah. Well, okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move that we adjourn the meeting and everyone has a wonderful summer.
And I say again, have a wonderful summer.
Or like 1 month off, but
that's all we have, right?
have a solid 1 month, please. Enjoy so bad.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you, Mickey, for seconding the motion. All in favor? And Aaron, you can raise your hand too, since this is a goodbye.
Yes. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Safe
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.